And Utah's majestic Wasatch Mountains provide the background today for the 2018 West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships here at the East Bay Golf Course in Provo, Utah. And the athletes will be competing on a course that can be described as being very fast. And once again, a very pleasant good morning to you wherever you may be. I'm George Devine alongside Josh Muxon. And Josh, let's talk about this course for a second. You've said it can be a fast one.
Yeah, George, I was out there yesterday. I had a chance to run the course, and it is absolutely fast. There's just a couple of bumps along the way, roughly about 700 meters in, and then a few S-curves right around a kilometer to go as you complete the 2-kilometer course. Other than that, fast and ready.
And the West Coast Conference women's race will get us going this morning. Let's take a look at the map on the women's side.
So the map on the women's side is 3 laps of this 2-kilometer European-style course that'll send you on your way to declare the WCC cross-country champion.
Well, there are a couple of titles at stake today. There's the team title and there's the individual title. Brigham Young is the host today. Do the Cougars come in as the favorite, or could the San Francisco Dons or Portland Pilots have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's home course advantage to the Cougars here today in the team title. I think they'd run away with it. They're one of the best teams in the country, and that's no slight on Portland, who is also a phenomenal team in the top 20 in the country. But I think home course advantage Cougars.
And the top 10 ladies in this race will wind up on the stage. And who could be our champion?
You know, I thought George, that's a great question. I thought it might be a BYU sweep, but I'm going to go with Lauren LaRocco, who is the 2016 WCC champion. She ran great at pre-nationals, and I expect her to have an epic battle with Erica Burke-Jarvis for the title.
And today these athletes compete with a very heavy heart, a stunning blow to the track community and to the state of Utah on Monday. Lauren McCluskey, an outstanding track and field athlete, had her life ended at the University of Utah Monday night. She was murdered. And Josh, it's the track community is a big family.
Yeah, it really is, and this did hit home pretty hard for a lot of athletes, both track and field and cross country, not just here in Utah, but all across the country, and especially in the home state where I'm from, of Washington, where Lauren was from as well.
Yeah, and you'll see the Brigham Young Cougars today wearing red ribbons in their hair in Lauren McCluskey's memory. Big rivals coming together to share their heartbreak, but coming up, the West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships live on the W.TV. Well, a championship on the line today in Provo, Utah. You're looking live at the East Bay Golf Course. George Devine, Josh Muxon back with you. And Josh, we kind of have this conversation every year. Those seconds right before the gun goes off, what's going through these athletes' minds?
Same thing that's going through my mind, George. A little bit nervous, a little bit excited. It's cross-country season. You've got some beautiful, crisp weather out here in Provo, Utah. The athletes are fit and ready to go. They've been working all summer, all fall for this moment.
You know, it's interesting. We always end up doing a weather report when we do cross country, and this morning it was in the mid-40s, and it's warming up, and it's going to get warmer as the morning goes on. Take a look at the weather report. We're looking at 52 degrees. It actually feels a little warmer than that.
Yeah, it does. And then when you're out there on the course, you actually want it to be a little bit cool like this. This is perfect cross-country weather. These athletes are going to be out here in the sun. There's very little cloud cover. There's hardly any wind, if at all. And it looks like perfect conditions out there.
Yeah, and there's almost no shade on this course either. There are very few trees.
Yeah, there aren't any trees out there to obstruct both the view or the wind. But like I said, there's no wind out here, and I think it's going to be a non-factor in terms of the sun.
And let's take a look and see how the team championship will be decided, how the scoring system works. 9 runners count for each team. The top 5 count for the team score. And your points are determined by place. And like golf, we're on a golf course. Lowest point total wins.
That's exactly right. Top 5 runners score on this. So everyone counts when you put together the team score.
And we head back down live to the finish line there, or the starting line, I should say. And you see the runners spread out, ready to go. Everybody in their boxes. And we're just waiting on the starter. There you see him in the red coat. to the left of your screen.
And as these runners start to get their way into the box, you see them sort themselves out based off of who they think is going to be one of their top athletes, and everyone else fills in behind them on their team.
And we are off in Provo, Utah, the 2018 West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships. And Josh, we talked a little bit about the course a while ago. What is this first lap going to be like in terms of the topography and the surface they're going to encounter?
You know, the only spot in here is about 700 meters in, as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier. There's a couple of small bumps in the course, but other than that, it's pretty smooth sailing. The way that it's laid out is it crisscrosses the fairways, so there's points where it's going to be advantageous for runners to take more of a tangent approach, to run on that really carpet-like grass that the fairway provides to them. And so they'll dip in and out between that and the rough basically the whole way until they reach the finishing stretch. And that finishing stretch, the last roughly 200 meters of the course, is almost all rough. So the only thing that could possibly happen is as the course continues to go on, lap after lap after lap, you may see that area get a little bit chewed up and a little bit soft for the athletes, especially when they come into the finishing area in the last 200 meters.
And it's been relatively dry here the last few days, so we're not going to see a whole lot of mud out there.
No, that's true, although the grass, when it is a little bit longer, can get a tad bit slick and get compressed. So if it's up and folks haven't been running on it, it's actually a little bit easier to run on. As it gets a little bit more compressed in that rough area, it can get a little slicker.
You mentioned Laura LaRocco in our opening a couple years ago in San Diego. She went out pretty early and stayed there.
Yeah, she did. She went out there and it paid off for her. A 2016 WCC champ. In that year, she was also 29th at the national meet. This year, however, I'm not sure she's going to be able to get quite as far away with Erica Burke-Jarvis and then Courtney Weymouth-Smith from BYU tracking her every single move. Erica Burke-Jarvis was 9th in that 2016 WCC meet.
Yeah, you mentioned Courtney Weymouth-Smith, and she ran a great race in Oakland last year.
Yeah, she did. She was 6th at the WCC meet in 2017 out there in Oakland. And you see right now a couple of BYU athletes out there in front. We're starting to pull away a little bit early. And that is Erica Burke-Jarvis out in front. The 2017, she ran very well earlier this year at 2018 pre-national meet. She was 4th at pre-nationals in what's called the Cardinal race. They have a number of different races at pre-nationals, and she and Lauren LaRocco were both in the Cardinal races, separated by about 7 seconds.
Yeah, the colors, those are the University of Wisconsin. They're the hosts, Cardinal, white, and gray.
Yeah, University of Wisconsin hosted 3 races this year, and we'll talk about them as the course continues to go on. Nutticum, which is grown to be a pretty big invitational, and then also pre-nationals, which is a preview of the very same course that they'll be running the national meet at.
And the pre-nationals this year taking place 2 weeks ago today. So is rest an issue for these runners?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit, but they've been gearing up. They've been putting in, they could be putting in 100-mile weeks leading into the fall training camp, right? So rest is really kind of a non-factor when you throw in the excitement of getting a chance to race. And if you're a BYU Cougar, especially at your home meet, this is something that only comes around every 10 years or so. This is a very, very special thing to be able to finish your senior year on your home course.
You know, it's funny, we mentioned that the championships move around. Last year, we were in Oakland, the Metropolitan Golf Links. We were essentially at sea level. This year, we're 4,000 feet higher. Is that going to play into a potential home course advantage for BYU?
I've done a lot of thinking about this, George, and it very well could be, but it's going to be totally dictated by the strategies that we put forth. Now, if you see the BYU athletes getting out there and hammering straight from the gun, that's going to put a lot of pressure on other athletes either to follow or to think that BYU is going to falter in the altitude. However, BYU trains here, they race here, they understand everything that's going on in the way that altitude affects them. So I don't think that they're going to be coming back to the field. I think right now what you're going to be seeing is athletes actually making a bigger push to close that gap and having to deal with some of that altitude.
So we've got 3 out up ahead, and then we've got the pack behind them.
And it does look like Lauren LaRocco is back there in 3rd. And so it's Erica Burke-Jarvis out there, Courtney Weymouth-Smith, and Lauren LaRocco also in the mix in the top 3. And it does look like Taryn Rollins is in 4th right now. So those are the top 4 that we predicted. A little bit of a different order, but again, we're about 5 minutes into the race, so anything can happen. And that's the beauty of cross country.
Yeah, they're not sprints. And there's a lot that can happen in the course of, 20 minutes.
Yep, and they could be just playing a little bit of a mind game here with Larocco out there. They could be taking it out a little bit harder than they normally would, or this could be their full strategy, full gas right from the go. We'll see this play out. I would think that after 2 laps is really where we're going to see a true separation of the top 3 if it actually happens earlier in the race than towards the end sprint.
One of the storylines coming into today, Josh, San Francisco, which has been a dynasty, won last year, won 5 titles in a row from 09 to 13. Their head coach, Helen Lehman-Winters, has moved on to the University of Oregon and is no longer with the Dons. How much is that going to affect their program as time goes on? She was a great recruiter, especially internationally.
Yeah, I don't think that they've really fell off too much in terms of the recruiting right now. They've got a number of wonderful international athletes, and they brought in a phenomenal coach who used to be at Boise State, who was also a national power, built up the program there at Boise State. So I think that USF is going to be fine. Like any cross-country program, you're going to have some ups and some downs. I think maybe it might not be San Francisco's year. But that doesn't mean that it has anything to do with the recruiting efforts by the coaches at this point.
So there you see our 3 leaders coming down the hill. And every time we get a close shot of them, Josh, we see more space between them and the rest of the field.
Well, that is true, but I think that the real excitement right here is the way that Larocco is running. We can see them pass right in front of us. She looks great. She's tucked right behind these 2 BYU Cougars. She's letting them do all of the work. All she has to do is just follow their footsteps until the final stretch. And as I mentioned, Erica Burke-Jarvis and Lauren Larocco were separated by only 7 seconds at pre-nationals. And 7 seconds in cross country is nothing. That can change in a race, no problem. Courtney Wayment-Smith had a good race there as well at pre-nationals. She was 13th in that event. I think the real piece of the puzzle here is whether Taryn Rollins is going to be making a big push, and she's currently in 4th place. She was 16th at the WCC in 2017, and then 51st at the 2017 national meet. Even though she was only 27th at pre-nationals, she does have a 15:49 5K personal best. Was one of the best 5K runners in the field, and also one of the fastest 1,500-meter runners. So maybe she's feeling it out. Maybe she's working through a little bit of fitness towards the tail end of championship season here. But I think Taryn Rollins could be one we keep an eye on as the race progresses.
Saw Rollins there a second ago, and it looks like there's a BYU group that's right behind her.
Not a surprise. BYU is probably going to run this race as much of a pack as they possibly can. I think they're going to be aggressive, but they're going to be aggressive as a group. Letting both Erica Burke-Jarvis and Courtney Wayment-Smith get away makes a lot of sense, but the 3 through 5 runners are going to be absolutely key for BYU to take home this championship. Because as we mentioned earlier, and as you well know, top 5 score, so you can't do it with just 2 studs.
Yeah, let's take a look at the body of work this year for BYU and see what they've done in building a great season in 2018. And Josh, right here, some big meets.
Yeah, they do that little home meet, this Autumn Classic. That's just basically a shakeout for them to come out and maybe move a little rust to the side before heading over to Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a bigger meet for sure. It's something where I think you really start to see some of the leaders on the team begin to emerge. And then pre-nationals, which is probably the biggest meet that they raced in up until this point in championship season, is going to be an indicator of who the top 7 and especially the top 5 scorers potentially could be.
Yeah, because everybody counts on the course.
That's true. That's true. And we know this, and BYU knows this better than most. The BYU women, we saw them be in a battle in 2016, a very tight battle in 2016. And also 2015 as well. So we're looking back a few years, but they've had some close losses at the WCC. But I think that there's a lot of pride on the line for the athletes, and especially for their coach Diljit, who's going to be out here rooting them on, moving up and down the course, encouraging them through the entire 6 kilometers.
And for a lot of the athletes competing today, we've talked about the marquee names, but this is the biggest stage they're going to compete on for their schools during the course of the season. And you may not win it, but I think it's one of those races where you'd like to have a personal best. You'd like to have something to build on moving to the spring season and maybe even moving to next fall.
Yeah, I think this is, for a lot of folks, this is a big point of pride for them. In fact, for all the athletes, to be honest, this is something that they really get excited about. This is why you come out and you join a team, is to race as a team at these championship events. Most of these athletes will move on to the regional meet. The regional meet is something that will be hosted if you are in the mountain region. It'll be right here, same course, and then if you are in the west region, it will be in Sacramento. And that is truly the qualifier for the national meet. So in terms of conferences, this is one of the better conferences in the country for both men and women, especially at the top of that. And there's a lot of pride for some of those teams that might not be at the top to kind of move a little bit closer to those perennial powers.
Yeah, the perennial powers being BYU and Portland, and the Portland men had that great dynasty, 32 straight championships. Going from the late 70s to 2010, I mean, that's a great run. Loyola Marymount's had some good runners on the women's side. 3-time champion Tara Erdman. Might remember her from back in 2011.
Yep. And George, as we look on the course, as we're putting some more names into the record book here, we can see that there has been a little bit of movement. There's a shot of Tara Rollins right now. Taryn is out there, maybe looks like a little bit on her own, but it looks like LaRocco and Erica Burke-Jarvis are out there. They've made a little bit of a separation, which is something that we thought might happen after 2 laps. And so that they put Courtney Weymouth-Smith, who wasn't that far off of them at pre-nationals, in a little bit of a tough spot. She's now out running by herself. And as you start to fall back from that lead group, your mind kind of plays tricks with you. I'm like, oh, maybe am I fit enough to hang on to third? Is this something that I can do? And you start to see maybe Taryn Rollins smell a little blood in the water and say, like, all right, she's coming back to me. Maybe I can make a move, and maybe I can go after this third spot. So that might play into the thought process as they're approaching that final lap. So there's 3 laps right here, each 2 kilometers long. Great viewing platform for spectators, fans, and individuals out here who just love the sport of cross country.
Yeah, pretty much the halfway point right now.
They're getting about there. We're coming up about 12 and a half minutes, 12:20 on the clock right now. So I would imagine they're going to be closing in on that final lap here very shortly. So we should see them making their turn into our line of sight before they send their way out for that final 2 kilometers. There is a little bit of altitude conversion when you're looking at 6 kilometers, but we'll see this play out even more as the races get longer. An example of this, if you're running maybe 10 kilometers, which they will at the regional meet for the men in a few weeks, it could be anywhere between 45 and 50 seconds of a conversion. What that essentially means is that at the altitude that we're at, you are going to be running about 45 or 50 seconds slower than you would at sea level, and that's how you generally think about it. And there's a whole calculated tables and charts that allow you to look at that a little bit more in depth. Now here the runners are coming through. This is the final lap right here. We're at 13 minutes and about 17 seconds as they head their way onto the final lap. And it is still LaRocco. I love it. She's just sitting there. She's great strategy right here. She's letting Erica Burke-Jarvis do every single step of work. She's right in her back pocket, breathing down her neck, literally breathing down her neck. And you can hear Erica Burke-Jarvis probably breathing and laboring a little bit, and that's going to put a little bit of fuel to the fire for LaRocco. I think she's in a fantastic spot right now as we see more of these individual athletes head out on their way to the final course right here. But this is great strategy. We're going to see if it pays out for her, George.
Yeah, and you've always been very succinct on that, Josh, and painting that picture of the strategy here really comes down to, let's say, the last 1,000 meters, and that's where we really see open the gifts, shall we say.
Yeah, I think in this one, though, with these 2 athletes, I think LaRocco might wait a little bit longer. What she's trying to avoid is she's trying to avoid that glimmer of hope for Erica Burke-Jarvis to finish this race off, and that's going to come roughly around 400 meters. I think if you're sitting around 400 meters, if Larocco hasn't made a move by then, at least pulled even with her, then I think it might be Erica Burke-Jarvis that can close the deal here. But at 1,000 meters, I don't see Larocco going. She's been playing this perfectly so far. I don't see any reason to change that up until there's going to be one big move that you have in cross country. And does she want to spend it at 1,000 meters, or does she want to spend it when pay dirt's in sight?
There you see the pack moving along.
Yeah, there's a beautiful shot right there with the mountains in the background. All these runners, of course, are not concerned with that in the least, as we see our two athletes in the lead, pounding it out up and down over a couple of twists and turns. When I was out on course, George, one of the things that originally concerned me when I looked at the map is all of these S-curves, but they are pretty gentle, and the course design is in such a way where it doesn't really slow you down as much. We've seen like Burke-Jarvis put in a tiny bit of surge right there, maybe trying to scoot away. We're probably about less than 5 minutes to go to crown the champion here, but Larocco is not going anywhere. So it's Burke-Jarvis, Larocco. Maybe Jarvis is getting a tiny bit concerned that Lauren Larocco has done everything that she should be doing to win this race.
Well, we focused a lot on the individual championship potential of these two runners. Let's take a look at how the teams have done over time. Portland's got 20 titles. San Francisco's got 6, and then a bunch of people, including a school that's not around anymore, U.S. International University. Ran in the WCC back in the 80s, but there you see how the teams have done historically.
And you can see that BYU has last won the team championship in 2014. As I mentioned, 2015, they didn't play their cards right, and they came away with a loss to the home team of Gonzaga at that point. And then 2016, a phenomenal close by, I believe it was Portland that won the race in 2016. To steal it from BYU in the closing stages.
That 2015 race in Spokane was one of the more entertaining and exciting sporting events I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, it was a very good, fun race. But this one right here, I see, it has started to open up. There's Burke-Jarvis has got a little bit of daylight on Larocco, so maybe Larocco is trying to gather herself from one big push. So Larocco is definitely not going at a K to go. She is going to have to close that gap, close it back in as they're making another turn. They're going to enter onto the quicker fairway portion of the course here, and this is truly a carpet. This is a blessing on the course if you've been running a little bit in the rough. But Larocco is going to have to make a move here fairly shortly to close that gap, or Burke-Jarvis is going to run away with this.
And the gap has gotten wider on what you call the carpet.
Yeah, it has. And the only thing that's in Larocco's advantage is there are a couple of those turns. So if Erica Burke-Jarvis can, maybe has a little bit of difficulty on the turns or just slows up ever so slightly, and Larocco accelerates into those turns, we may be looking at a chance for her to close the gap. But here we go, George. This is the final stretch right here. We've got just maybe a minute or two, depending on how they've been running, to close the deal here on the 2018 WCC Cross Country Women's Individual Champion, and the hometown Cougar has even more of a lead at this point.
Yeah, and there are certain shots like this one right here where you really see that gap widening.
It is widening, and they're going to go around. They're going to make a right-hand bend around this lake, and then they're going to make another S-curve before heading home. This was it's a slightly down dip, and then you can see her go down and just a tad bit back up. Nothing to be concerned of whatsoever for her. And then Larocco, does she have one big push? And we're looking at maybe a 3 or 4 second advantage right here. Does she have enough kick in those legs? Larocco is a stud 5,000 meter runner and a super strong 10K runner. But as Burke-Jarvis continues to press on, maybe this race is coming to a close.
It looks like there's also a wide gap between third and the rest of the pack.
And it looks like Courtney Weymouth-Smith is back there in third place. We're looking for Taryn Rollins to maybe come up and close the gap a little bit. The crowd is building, and you know that when the crowd is there, the finish line, the barn doors, as we say, you can smell them from here. So is Erica Burke-Jarvis going to be able to hold on? And it certainly looks like it as she comes up the final stretch, George, making that turn in front of her hometown crowd. They're putting their hands together, and it looks to be that she's going to take this title, and actually a very quick time for the course as LaRocco continues to press on her way in, but to no avail. Erica Burke-Jarvis, your 2018 WCC cross-country individual champion, running a great time, under 20 minutes, and then we see the second place finisher, Lauren LaRocco, coming through. So we're still looking at now Courtney Weymouth-Smith, the third place runner, who is just a shade over 20 minutes at this point. She's also going to be carried on in from those BYU Cougar faithful who have come out in force to cheer her on at the WCC Cross Country Championships. This is the only time that they will get a chance to run in front of this crowd at this magnitude of an event in their career, and they're taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, and a great fan turnout this year, as we've seen almost every year with the West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships, and it's a big sports day here as Portland coming into the 4th and 5th spots in the race.
It does look like Taryn Rollins out there in the 4th spot, and it looks like BYU, so we've got BYU in 1, Portland in 2, BYU in 3, Portland in 4 and 5, 6. And it looks like in 7th place, it looks like BYU. So unofficially, we're trying to get a grasp on whether or not Portland's 5th can come through, and it looks like BYU has their 4th and 5th coming through the line right about now. We're going to get some unofficial results as they pop up onto our timing mats. But it looks to be unofficially that BYU might have claimed both the individual and the team championships here.
And that really speaks to the squad depth of the Cougars and the pilots to duel so deep into the race for the team title.
Yeah, for sure it does. Absolutely. I mean, I think they knew that going into this. There are a ton more athletes that are coming their way in here. But, you know, I think that these are two of the class programs in the country, not just in the WCC, but in the country. BYU has been hovering around that top 10 spot for the women, and Portland's in the top 20 as well. So they really are a couple of blue chip programs, George.
And great commitments by both universities to track and cross country. And they're consistent every year, and every year we talk about the Cougars and the pilots being a part of this championship. And remember, your team score is, could be determined by who's finishing at this point in the race as well.
That's true. You're looking at making sure that every single athlete on your team does their job to make sure that you're putting forth, the lowest team score. And what can happen a lot of times is that you might have one or two athletes out there in front that are phenomenal, but if the 3 or the 4 or the 5 individuals, and there's a big gap, or we call the spread in between them, that can get filled up by a lot of runners and balloon your score rather quickly. So we see the unofficial results up there on the screen. It was Erica Burke-Jarvis taking home the championship unofficially, Lauren LaRocco in 2nd, Courtney Weymouth-Smith in 3rd, Taryn Rollins in 4th. So it looks like there's a number of athletes out there that have done their job. We just had our predictions just a little bit flip-flop, George. Nothing to be ashamed of.
No, not at all.
Great job out here by those top 4 athletes, and we're looking to get some of those team projections soon. As the unofficial teams are going to be up here on the screen here momentarily. It looks like BYU, Portland, and then San Francisco. At least we got that part of the program right. It looks to be the top 3 teams in the conference, and we're looking to get some unofficial scores as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, remember the team scores are not fully completed yet because there are still athletes out on the course, and you have to sort all that out before you can definitively say who the champion all the way down to 10th place.
Yeah, there's a protest period as well, so you can make sure that all of that gets sorted out before you declare the champion at this stage. And
athletes still crossing the finish line.
Yeah, we're at the 24-minute mark here as more of the athletes are coming through. We didn't get to see many of the USF athletes, but out there, Tatiana Schulte is senior from USF. She was 10th at the WCC in 2017. She was probably doing her job out there leading the charge for the Dons. But a number of different athletes out there from a wide range of schools. Great to see them out here tackling the course. You might have seen some of the LMU athletes, Kyla Danforth, a junior from LMU, one of our early season leaders for LMU, and Emma McCurry of Santa Clara. I watched her race down there, actually the Bronco Invite a couple of weeks ago. So I expected her to have a good race. And we'll look deep into the results to see whether or not she was able to move her way up. Santa Clara, a very up-and-coming program in the WCC, so hopefully they made some waves here today.
Yeah, you mentioned the Bronco Invite, one of the longest-running cross-country races on the West Coast, and Abby Meck of Pepperdine ran well there. She was a top 10 finisher. Abby Bolt of St. Mary's also ran that race well.
Yep, they both did. The Bronco Invite's been going on for about 15 years or so, and they do a wonderful job there. It's a very, very fast meet, but it's a great chance for a number of WCC athletes to come out there and kind of like test their mettle, I suppose, against each other before coming to conference.
Yeah, and we had the championships there back in 2013, back at Sunnyvale.
That's correct, yeah. So we see a few of these athletes maybe translating that success into conference success here today.
And that was actually a very interesting course because there's some couple of stretches where they're running on asphalt and concrete.
Yeah, it's more of like a compressed dirt out there, one of the main stretches, but they do pop onto the under the sidewalk for a bit. But none of that here today. Beautiful cross-country course here, hosted by the BYU Cougars. And the backdrop, of course, the snow-capped mountains here. But it is very fast, and so even though you're not running on any sort of pavement, this is a very quick course, even at altitude. And it was a surprise to see how fast these athletes are running. That should be a great testament for them to be able to translate that into some regional success in just a short period of time. And
one of the things regionally about the West Coast Conference is you've got 9 schools that compete in the West region, and BYU is in the Mountain region, so plenty of opportunities to move on.
That is true. That is true. The West region is a tough region to get out of and make it to nationals. But as we saw last year, the Portland men were able to tackle that task and then move on to huge success, runner-up position in the national meet. But the BYU, one of the advantages that they have is not only will they be hosting it, it'll be on this exact same course. And just one more lap for the men, and keep it the same for the women. So this is as good of a preview as you can get if you are a BYU Cougar.
Here are unofficial results. Erica Burke-Jarvis, our unofficial champion. Lauren LaRocco right behind her. BYU in Portland taking all 5 of the top spots. The Pilots with 3 of them.
That is good. It looks like Ava Richardson from Portland in 5th spot right there. So very good showing for the top 3 for the Portland Pilots. But again, we saw a lot of the Cougars come through in that 3, 4, 5 spot. We're looking a little bit deeper into the results to see whether or not it made a dent, if it was super, super close for the BYU and the Portland Pilots.
You know, the one thing, and I said this before, Josh, I'm very impressed with the spectator turnout today, and it's a big day locally in sports, especially for Brigham Young. They've got a football game at 1:30. They've got a big women's soccer match tonight.
This is cross country. These are the diehard fans. They would have been out here at sun, rain, snow, whatever it is. That's part of cross country. It's a chance for them to get out into the elements a little bit, enjoy some of that crisp fall weather. And BYU did a really wonderful job. I talked to one mom, actually, who came in from Santa Clara, who was all the way from Hawaii to watch her daughter race. And that is truly a testament to just the camaraderie and the family that goes on with the cross country.
Let's head down to the race course. The 3rd member of our broadcast team, Sammy O'Brien, is joined by a champion.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm here with the individual winner from BYU, Erica. You led the way for most of this race, but at that last lap, you pulled away. What changed for you?
I wanted to win a conference championship, and at 5K with 1K to go, they were yelling at me, "Do it for Jack," which is my baby. So I was like, okay, I got to do it for him, and I just gave it my all.
Home field advantage. You were embraced by your family when you came across the finish line. I want to talk a bit about the altitude home field advantage. How did you feel out there on the course with altitude?
Well, we still went out fast. My coach said we went out a 5:16 mile, which is fast at altitude. So I even felt like it was hard. I can't imagine what the girls from California thought, because it was a tough race.
I believe unofficially you guys might have won this race. If that would be the case, it would be the first since 2014 that this BYU team has won. What does that mean for the program?
Oh, it means everything. It's been our goal since I was a freshman to win a conference championship. So I'm so proud of my team. I love them.
And the BYU women coming in here 9th nationally in the country as a team. What did you learn about yourself and about this team?
That we're tough, that we can grit it out. When we set a goal, we're going to achieve it.
Thank you, Erica. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Back to you guys.
All right, Sammy, great job as always. They mentioned the national rankings, and there you see the snow-capped Wasatch Mountains. Then you take a look at the women's poll. Colorado owns the top spot, and then BYU in the top 10 at number 9. So some of the better teams in the country. Those mountains make me think about skiing.
Yeah, it's going to be ski season here momentarily, but I think looking at the back of the run that Erica Burke-Jarvis just put down, we mentioned that the third lap was the crucial lap here, and they did get out quick, and they used the altitude, as she mentioned in her interview with Sammy, used the altitude to her advantage with her teammate Courtney Weymouth-Smith out here trying to make it a very much a strength race out here. And the fact that they went out as fast as they did is something that was going to definitely play into that advantage of them being here and training at altitude. But I got to say, as Lauren LaRocco looked like a stud that she is, and I would not count her out for the next couple of meets as she goes back down to sea level in Sacramento and then over to Wisconsin for the national meet. She is a legit player on the national scene. And so is Erica Burke-Jarvis, clearly, because she took home the win today.
Let's take a look at the unofficial team results. See how these young ladies' individual efforts stacked up. These are still unofficial, but BYU, Portland, San Francisco, Loyola Marymount, and St. Mary's round out the top 5.
LMU doing a very good job out there to grab that 4th position. San Francisco, as we talked about a little bit earlier on, not a huge slide. Now they were 2nd in the country last year, so there's only one way to go if you're 2nd in the country. But they did a wonderful job grabbing that final podium position.
So San Francisco, last year's champion. We've seen Portland and BYU win championships before in the West Coast Conference.
And there's a nice shot of looks to be the Portland women out there celebrating the runner-up finish.
Yeah, a lot of pride with the pilots and the Cougars in performing, especially in this meet. And there again, you see the team results. Get a wide look at our course.
And you look, George, is like with these two teams, success breeds success, and there's a reason why they keep competing and they keep battling each other for the top 2 spots. As they are the cream of the crop, and they've built that into their program. 2 wonderful coaches out there, Ian Soloff and Dilgy Taylor, have done a phenomenal job of making sure that culture of success is in everything they do, and it pays off on days like today.
When we come back, we'll firm up these team results and we'll talk to one of those great coaches. You've been watching the 2018 West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships. Stay with us. We'll be back to Provo after this on the W. And there you see again the Wasatch Mountains here in Utah. And let's see who's standing at the top of the hill in the team standings in the West Coast Conference. Brigham Young Cougars take the team championships. They are now official. There you see 27 points. Portland with 41, and then San Francisco taking third with 78 points. Let's head down to Sammy O'Brien with the championship coach.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm down here with Coach Taylor. Coach, your team's performance today just announced officially that you guys have won. First time since 2014 that BYU has won the team event. How does that feel?
Great, super excited. I mean, we knew Portland was going to come in and give us a good race, and I'm just really proud of the girls that they put it together.
I want to talk to you about the individual performance by Burke Jarvis there at the end, pulled away from Portland right on the last lap. What did you see in her today?
That she executed the race plan perfectly. That's what we talked about yesterday, was just kind of going out a little bit hard, being that we're at altitude, and then just breaking away with 800 to go, and it's exactly what she did. So.
You're the number 9 team in the nation nationally. This performance here today, what did you learn about your team?
Well, it's good. They can perform under pressure, so that's good, but we still have some work to do, and we have 3 weeks till NCAA, so we're just going to continue to get a little better.
Thanks so much for your time, Coach.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Sammy, thanks for your hustle. Josh, your final thoughts on the team championship and how not so much the top 3 or 4 runners played a role overall, but how the deep part of each squad did.
You know, this thing is a strong indication. BYU is a deep, strong, very good team. Well deserved of their number 9 position. Portland ran a great race, but I think this is a good example of just how talented BYU is, top to bottom, not just 1 through 5, but 1 through 7. And they may have even held out a couple of athletes, so they might even be better at regionals when they come around.
Josh, any surprises today in the race?
You know, I think this played out pretty much as we thought, George. The top 4 individuals were exactly that. There were a few athletes that stepped up for San Francisco to make sure that they grabbed that 3rd position, the podium spot for them as a team. So that was nice to see if you're a Dons fan.
So the Dons is San Francisco's last year's defending champion, finishing 3rd behind Brigham Young and Portland. Let's take a look at how things went today. There was our start, and they got it going. Brigham Young and Portland fighting for the top spot in the women's race. Now, when we come back to Provo, Utah, the men will compete. Let's see who can stand on top of the mountain when we return on the W.TV. Portland and BYU considered the favorites. We'll have them coming up in just a few minutes. Josh and I'll be back on the W.TV. And champions will be crowned again today in Provo, Utah, the 2018 West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships. We're glad you're with us from East Bay Golf Course. George Devine along with Josh Muxon. And Josh, we saw a great women's race. Now it's time for the men's race. And like we talked about with the women, there are two things. There's the team championship, the individual championship. Who are the teams we should be watching?
You know, I think the team championship will be decided between a couple of different schools here that are very familiar to you, George. It is the Portland Pilots and the BYU Cougars, two of the national powerhouses in cross country in men's running. Portland Pilots second place overall, the national runners-up last year. BYU Cougars on that podium as well. And I think that's going to happen is they're going to flip spots here today. BYU is going to take the WCC championship on their home course. In terms of individuals, Rory Linkletter from BYU has been the class of the field, but he has been pushed to the line by Chris Ollie of San Francisco. That's going to be a great battle up front. Connor McMillan from BYU should also be in the mix. And, of course, Nick Hauger representing the Portland Pilots will be there as well. A great 1, 2, 3, 4 for the individual title. And then James Mara and Connor Mantz, two of the most exciting freshmen in the country. James Mara from Tacoma stayed in state to go to Gonzaga under Coach Pat Tyson. Ran the 9th fastest prep 5,000 meters in history before becoming a Zag. And then Connor Mantz, who actually led the pre-national meet up until about 50 meters to go when he was overtaken by both Chris Ollie and Rory Linkletter in a race that Linkletter ended up winning with a little bit of swagger, I might say, George.
Yeah, and this is also Gonzaga's best year ever in men's cross country. It'll be interesting to see how the Zags place as a team. Let's get a look at the course. It's pretty much the same course the ladies ran a little while ago, but it's going to be a little bit longer.
It is exactly the same course that the ladies ran, just with one additional lap to be added on at the conclusion of 6 kilometers. They'll be running 8 kilometers in total. And the only thing that you should be aware of out there on course is as the day goes on, we've had a number of athletes out there already pounding down the grass. Could it be slick? Perhaps. But I think, honestly, this is going to be about fitness. This is going to be about the athletes themselves and not the course. So this is a great opportunity for us to see some phenomenal individual and team competitions.
And you can see beautiful blue skies here in Provo, Utah. And the temperature is warming up. It was 52 degrees when we started the women's race. It's warmed up to 60. It was down in the high 30s overnight. So basically a 25-degree change in the last, let's say, 4 hours.
Yeah, you know, it's still cross-country weather. 60s pushing it a little bit on the warm side for cross-country, as the purists might say. But I was out there this morning. I did my little run out there this morning. It was a little bit cooler, and it did feel like cross-country, like fall is in the air. And these athletes, they know that. When the weather turns a little bit colder, it's a little bit crisper out there, it is time to race. It's championship season, and that is what we're seeing here today. BYU Cougars, Portland Pilots, they'll be in there. And, of course, Gonzaga, as you mentioned, I believe it's their first time they've been nationally ranked ever. And they'll be looking to battle it out with the USF for that final podium position. What we should be seeing is a very tight pack running mentality for the Pilots. And the USF Dons will be looking to get some of those low sticks early on and hoping their 3 through 5 runners can do a wonderful job of closing out the scoring for the Dons. There you see in the national poll, Northern Arizona, BYU a solid second and Portland fifth. I got to say, I think actually Portland's a little bit better than fifth. Honestly, I think they're probably right there with BYU in the top 2 positions. So if I were to put this together, I think Northern Arizona right now is a clear number 1. BYU and Portland probably split the difference between 2 and 3 if we were to look at my own personal polls. But that will play out in a few weeks, George. But in the meantime, WCC.
Let's take a look at the scoring rules, see how things are going to work out for the team championship. 9 runners per squad. The top 5 count toward your team score, and you're determined by your place in the race and your lowest point total wins. Last year we saw a perfect score by BYU, Josh.
Not a chance this year, George. Not a chance. And I'll tell you why. I think Chris Ollie is a phenomenal athlete for the Dons. He's Brit. He's got a team bronze at the U23 European Cross Country Championship, so he knows how to race. He's got a great 3K individual time at 7:57. He's also run fast over 5K outdoors. He's going to be in there. He's going to be breaking up that top 5 sweep, absolutely. And Nick Hauger, if he runs the race that he's capable of running, he'll be right there as well. So the athletes are lining up for the start of the race at this moment.
Just waiting on the gun, and there it is. We are underway, the 2018 West Coast Conference Men's Cross Country Championship.
And they're out fast, George. You can see right away they're not messing around. So the strategy, clearly, at least in this first 400 meters, is to throw down and get out before the course tightens up. It is a wide berth at the start to make sure that all those teams are able to fit in that starting box area. But then it does tighten up a little bit. You can probably get to 10, 15 runners across, and that's all you need. It starts to slowly separate itself out after about 400 meters. BYU out in front as we thought, and that's James Mora right there just to the right of your shot in the Gonzaga kit, and Nick Hauger in the dark beard on the left, tucked in right behind Linkletter, who is in the white headband. Linkletter likes to run in that headband. You know it's warmer out when Linkletter has thrown away his arm sleeves. He is choosing not to run in the arm sleeves here today, but he does have the trademark headband on, sitting there in second place at the moment. It looks like Connor McMillan also out there right as the gun went off, leading the charge. McMillan's no slouch. He's a stud. He was first at the Notre Dame Invite, 7th at Pre-Nationals. He won a WCC in 2017. So he'll be out there, maybe trying to defend his title. But I bet you back in the locker room that Linkletter and McMillan, are wondering, and when it comes down to it, are we gonna hold hands across the line, or are we gonna go toe to toe? We know that McMillan has no problem trying to win the race towards the end, and I would expect nothing but a long push from him to try and win it again.
Yeah, and last year, you talk about holding hands across the line. That's exactly how somebody who competed in that race described it to me for BYU last year. It wasn't a matter of, who was going to finish. They were all going to finish in the top 5.
That's true. They all did finish in the top 5, but somebody did win the race. And so I think that little dynamic right there is not going to be a concern here today. Somebody had to sort themselves out to get the win last year, but there's enough power up at the front to make sure that this sorts itself out well in advance of the finish line, I think. There might be a 1-2 BYU punch, but they're going to have to go, as we mentioned, going to go full gas towards the last kilometer of this race to make sure they secure the individual title in front of their home crowd. Is Chris Ollie and Nick Hauger, and we saw James Mora. They're no slouches.
Yeah, and Mora really considered a blue chip in the cross-country game, and Gonzaga glad to have him, and they're really excited about the future in Spokane.
Yeah. He is absolutely no joke. He's one of the best recruits in the country, and we talked about his 5,000 meter time, which is about 14 flat, 9th fastest prep 5K in history. But the eye-popping stat was his 3,200 meter time. He ran 8:46 for 3,200 meters, which is about 16 meters short of, 16, 18 meters short of 2 miles. And so that's a phenomenal time for an athlete. Coincidentally, the head coach of Gonzaga is Pat Tyson. And Pat Tyson, I believe, went to the same high school as James Mora. And so the recruiting visits, and Pat Tyson went out there to recruit Mora and thought he was just going to go meet him. Lo and behold, a few hours later, he's having dinner with his family, and they're sitting around talking, just kind of figuring out what motivated him to be the athlete that he is, and just kind of really clicked, and it was a great grab for Gonzaga. But I think he wouldn't have made that decision unless he felt great about the opportunities for him as an athlete and as a student. I think both of those go hand in hand with a lot of these schools on the West Coast. So you're not just coming to be an athlete; you're coming to be a phenomenal student in our society afterwards.
Yeah, both Pat Tyson and James Mora from Tacoma, Washington.
Yep. Just across the mountains from me, George.
Lincoln High School.
Absolutely. As we look back onto the course itself, we see some of these athletes making those turns, those twist and turns. Is what you're going to see in the men's race, maybe even a little bit more than the women's race, of these kind of like internal battles between some of these 3, 4, 5 athletes. And all these positions start to add up. So you got to win your battle as you're racing around this course. And what I mean by that is that after about a mile, things start to sort themselves out, and you're usually shifting, about 5-6 places at most after a mile in a cross-country race, right? And so you got to protect your space. So you have almost these like little packs of races within the race that you're trying to go after and you're trying to win. And so each third-place runner is trying to win their little pack, and each fourth-place runner is trying to win their pack. And so you'll see them kind of group up, and what it ends up doing is it creates a little bit of excitement, not just for the athletes. I think gives them a bit of motivation, but it's also something where, as a spectator and as a crowd, you know how important that is for them to win that. Because when it comes down to it, a couple of points here and there, that could be the difference between going home with top spot on the podium or, slipping off entirely.
Yeah, slipping maybe from second down to third.
Yeah, even a little bit further than that. It doesn't take much in cross country. You had mentioned that it's very much like golf. You have a bad hole, that's going to balloon your overall score. You have a bad mile, it could do the same thing for you cross country.
Well, you see the BYU Cougars are setting the pace out front just like they did a year ago. Let's take a look at how they did last year. McMillan, Carney, Klinger, Linkletter, and Young in the top 5 a year ago in Oakland.
Yeah, and Daniel Carney is not running this race, and Casey Klinger is taking this year off. So you've got a couple of athletes that are out. That doesn't mean they don't have a stable full of studs that they can just slot right in there and go after the individual and team titles. But I think the big thing that we're seeing right now is that if you're looking at the lead pack, it's huge. And it's very tight. It's not strung out, so it's wide. As you're looking at the shot right here, you're seeing that it looks like 5-6 people wide, and Moira is still there. You've got on the other side Hauger's back there sitting right off a Linkletter. And what that's telling me is that because it's so wide, it means it's not going as fast. It's not strung out. It's not single file. People aren't just slotting in behind each other. And it'll tighten up a little bit as you go around the corners because you're not looking to run something wide when you can run a tangent. But when it opens back up into the straightaways, you can see it stretches out a little bit wider. It's about 30 runners right there in that lead pack, and if you look from behind, you can see that there's clearly 5 scores from Portland, clearly 5 scores from BYU. At this point in time, it's honestly it's anybody's game, but we're 7 minutes in, and 7 minutes is nothing in cross country. We're just getting a warm up in, and guys are just starting to feel things out. Murrow will take his turn at the front, maybe push just a tiny bit, but he's got to know in the back of his head that he's not going to be able to break these guys from this far out. He's a smarter athlete than that. So he might just be playing with the course a little bit and figuring out, how to stretch his legs on those very few and far between downhill bumps and then making sure that he has a clean line to go around these corners. As at this pace, what you're really looking for is just like a clean race, roughly until about the 20-minute mark. And once you get about 20 minutes, it's just start to turn the screws a little bit and head for home.
It's funny. You mentioned a freshman being up at the front, and usually we see juniors and seniors dominate this race. How much does experience come in on the course, especially as the race gets longer?
Well, I think as these freshmen, so Connor Mance and James Moira, they're phenomenal freshmen, and Connor Mance ran track and field for BYU in 2018. So this is his first cross-country season for the Cougars, but he has experience racing and running at the collegiate level. And I remember, at least in my case, moving up from 5K to 8K in cross-country is a big jump, right? So you're throwing on 2 extra miles, you're getting close to double the distance, and it is a big jump, but that's why you spend all summer, adding those extra miles. That's why you're doing these long workouts. So it's less of a feeling for you when it comes down to championship season. They've been basically training like collegiate athletes for these very top freshmen already. And they've been doing it since their junior year of high school at minimum. So the only transition is now that they're racing with people who can actually compete with them. And when you're in high school, there might be a couple of guys, and they're blowing the doors off of everyone else. But now they've got the Linkletters around, they've got the McMillans around, they've got guys like Clayton Shumway, who's a sophomore from BYU, is there. And so you've got a lot more folks to be next to you, both in the competition and then also in training as well. And I think that just helps with your confidence. The more guys you can run with time and time again, when you get the race, you're like, okay, it's not that big a difference anymore.
Yeah, and we're seeing that pack at the top thin out a little bit, which is predictable.
Yeah, coming up about 9.5 minutes right now. I'd say that nothing's going to change too much, and at least until 5K. So we're looking at right around 15 minutes. They're going to be coming up to 5K here in about 5 minutes or so. But I think it's a little bit of a course piece here that's allowing the pack to string out. I mean, still a lot of guys up there at the front. Looks like all 5 scorers for BYU. Looks like Portland might have one guy off the back, but I don't know if that's too much of a problem if Portland's can displace a few of those BYU athletes, because there's nobody in between them, right? So whether he's at the back of the pack scoring right next to his Portland teammate, or he's in no man's land, he's still scoring the same point. So it makes no difference right now unless he gets past.
Yeah, 9 BYU runners up on that top 30 right now.
Well, there you go, nine BYU runners. Great testament to the work that Coach Eyestone has done, not just now, but over the years. I mean, these guys have been training with him, the seniors, 4 or 5 years, to be honest. So that's, I think it's a culture thing, not just for BYU, but Rob Connor's pilots, and Coach Connor has been at the helm, and honestly, forever at Portland, and has done a tremendous job with building it up a culture. That's unique. It's something that hasn't been replicated in many other spots around the country, and is consistent. And he gets guys that fit into that culture. That's what you're looking for as a coach, is figuring out, am I getting fantastic athletes, and I'm getting fantastic fits. As you want them to feed off each other and continue to just press each other and support each other. You're going to have ups and downs. Not every day is going to be a great day. Not every step's going to be a great step here, even if you go on to finish in the top 5 right now. And you can see one of the Portland athletes right there in the it looks like about 4th position. That looks like Riley Osen, who's a sophomore. He's was 34th at WCC XC in 2017, but he's an 841 steepler. And what that says to me is that he has got a huge potential in cross country. He's a strength runner. 841 steeple is legit. And I think he definitely should and is in that top pack.
Well, speaking of the top pack, Brigham Young and Portland have dominated in the West Coast Conference. And really the thing that kind of upset the apple cart for Portland was BYU coming in. Look at the bottom of the screen, Josh, 1979 to 2010. Portland. That's
not too bad if you're a Pilot fan. But look, I think that Portland actually welcomes BYU coming into the conference. They from 1979 until 2010, it's just like, Portland. They pre-printed the titles, for crying out loud. They stamped them on the cup before the season even started. But now there's a little bit of drama, and that's forcing Portland to up their game. So much so that we saw them finish in their highest position at nationals last year, where they were runners up. Now they came into the meet last year, admittedly after the meet, where they didn't run all of their top athletes, and that's a little bit of gamesmanship that Coach Connor played, and it paid off tremendously. And full credit to him. He says, look, we're going to run the risk of maybe not performing as well at the WCCs and put it all in for the national meet, and oh boy, it totally paid off for him. So there's a reason why he's successful in that sort of strategy is one of them. And there you see like NAU Northern Arizona 74 points, which is a great score at the national meet, and Portland finishing in 2nd. That surprised a lot of folks. I don't think it's going to be as big of a surprise this year. BYU finishing in 3rd, and a solid 3rd at that. So I think the question right now is, can Portland proved everyone wrong in 2017? Can they do it again in 2018? Has BYU learned a valuable lesson over the course of 2017 to 2018? Yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. First things first, though, WCC Championships is clearly out there and underway. We're coming up on that 5K mark. We're at 14, coming up on 14 minutes into the race itself. And you've got our predicted BYU athletes up there in front, and that is Nick Hauger of Portland. We're trying to keep an eye on, we had mentioned the San Francisco Dons, and we're trying to keep an eye on seeing where Chris Ollie, the junior from San Francisco, is located on the race course. Now, George, as you're looking at the screen right now, you can see that it's strung out a little bit. There are the top 4 athletes that are right near the front. And it looks like Linkletter is sitting back there, maybe in 4th position, right behind Hauger. And it looks to be at number 22 out there for the pilots out in front. That's Connor Mance, again, that freshman. He did lead. He's not afraid to go to the front. He did lead until about 50 meters to go, as I mentioned, at pre-national meet. But, the question is like, does he have to go so early? Maybe he feels like this is the way that he needs to run. He was a phenomenal high school athlete as well, super stud, a high school athlete. So the success is certainly something that is not unheard of for him. But I think the question is, is this a bid for the win right now, or is this something where he's maybe taking his turn up at front? We saw Connor McMillan, who's number 25, right behind him, running up at front a little bit earlier on in the race. So maybe this is just, look, everybody's going to take a turn, and then every man for himself with about a K to go, maybe 800 meters to go. So maybe we'll see Linkletter get up there towards the front and push the pace a little bit. But Hauger running super tough right now. Content to let BYU do BYU. Big surprise for me, I got to say. Chris Ollie, I thought he'd be right there. And at this point, we don't see him in the picture.
No, we sure don't.
And as we're looking back there, you're trying to see who else is tangling with that top 4 or so. And again, the Nick Hauger right back there, and a few more pilots in that chase pack, a little bit of like peloton, if you will. And there you go, up on screen, BYU, the white over white, and then the purple crush, the grape crush right there of Portland, content to sit back by the time. And then a couple more BYUs out in that chase pack. I guess that'd be chase pack number 1. And then right in front, it looks to be like Mura of Gonzaga is running out there sort of by himself, which, this might be a lesson for him to figure out either I commit and go with that lead pack, or I settle back and bide my time with the second pack and use them to maybe close the gap. Now, George, as they're making their way right around the pond here, this is one area of the course where it is, we're kind of looking at the sort of final stretch, as you will, for them to send their way back onto the next lap. That little bit of a pond, it isn't technical at all, but it is if you are in a frame of mind of looking for some spots on the course where you can gauge how much distance you have to the finish line or to that next lap, that is a good marker for you, because there's very few undulations or very few like physical markers out there on course where you can gauge how far individuals are in front of you, or for you to really figure out where you are and how much time you have left to run. And that becomes a very critical piece of the puzzle as the race continues to wear on. These athletes are on their way. You can see right in front of us, they're on their way for, it looks like, lap number 3, our top 4 athletes. Linkletter sitting back there, slipping back into 4th. And there's that chase pack of about 4 athletes. And it looks like Mora has slipped back in there. And I think I see the Dons. That is Chris Ollie that is in that chase pack. Could possibly be him. Back to the leaders, and there you see there's it looks like that San Francisco yellow over green, perhaps, right there. And we're trying to get a number on that. Ollie is number 209 in the I guess yellow over green of University of San Francisco Dons.
You're talking earlier about Rob Connor and the great job he's done building Portland into a dynasty. He's only the second coach associated with Pilot Athletics to win the Oregon Sports Award Slots-Gill Sports Person of the Year. He won that this year, and Slots-Gill, the longtime head coach at Oregon State in men's basketball. In fact, the arena is named for Slots-Gill, so that's a big honor.
Yeah, well,
Clive Charles, the men's soccer coach at Portland's the only other one to have it.
Yeah, well deserved. Rob Connor deserves all the accolades that he receives, and probably a bit more, to be honest with you. I mean, the guy flies under the radar. He likes the way that his programs run. Not necessarily the limelight, but he gets it done. And he's a great coach, a huge supporter, not just of his program, but of the sport. And I think that's something that both Ed Eyestone, all these coaches across the West Coast, I mean, that's a huge piece of the puzzle here, is when you're in the WCC, you want to see success for other teams as well. It helps with your programs. It helps with kind of the national recognition, helps with recruitment as well. So you want everybody to succeed and do a wonderful job. Those two coaches have been around for a long time, and I can't say enough about Rob Connor. He's a great guy and has done a wonderful job with the grape crush, as they say.
Yeah, being around collegiate athletics as long as I have, I heard a coach say once, in order to get your administration to care about your team, your biggest rival needs to care about the sport as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I talked to Coach Eyestone last night. He and I caught up a little bit in the parking lot of the course as his team was leaving, and I was about ready to head out on the course, check it out myself, and we're catching up on a bunch of stuff from back in the day when we used to. I used to bring him in to do a little bit of race announcing, believe it or not, and catching up a little bit about what was going on with his team. And he said that, like a couple of the guys weren't running, but there was a number of BYU folks that were going to be coming out because it is their home course, and it is a nice chance for a lot of alumni and a lot of that history to come back in here. I know Gonzaga had an alumni event last night. So these cross-country races are as much about the community and as much about the spectators and as much about the former athletes as they are about the current athletes. And I think that's something that's really cool about BYU, Portland, Gonzaga, Santa Clara, all of those wonderful schools that do a really wonderful job of supporting the community.
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier at the start of the women's broadcast, but it really is a big family in track and cross country.
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely is. And the thing of it is the reason why that is that everybody, regardless of whether you're running in 200th spot or second spot, you're going to be out there putting in the work most of the time solo. So imagine the season ends and you have a great season and it runs until June. And you've got July and August before it cranks up again. And a lot of those times, those athletes are running. They might go home for the summer, and they're putting in miles. And that time, it could be 100 miles a week where some of these athletes are running. And it's lonely miles. And you know that your teammates are doing the same thing up in the hills, on the roads, over the turf and the pavement, whatever it is. They're doing the same thing. When you finally get all together, there's a little bit of that misery loves company, as you go through those workouts and you suffer by yourself, and everybody's got a job to do, and everybody needs to perform at their absolute best because the scores all matter. And at the end of the races, you look across all the competition and they've done the same thing. So I think that's a wonderful way to establish community.
We're starting to see the crowd at the front get a little bit smaller too.
Yes, indeed. It looks to be that the crowd at the front, Nick Hauger, is now pushing the pace a little bit over Connor Mance. And Hauger biding his time, sticking back there, and he's going around that little lake, as we mentioned a bit earlier. It's one of the only spots on the course where you can sight yourself, and he's pushing on. So that means you're coming up on one lap to go, right? So now this is getting close to it. We're at 22 minutes right now, so this is the final piece of the puzzle right here. He's going to be coming up towards the final finishing stretch, and not a lap to go. This is the last lap right here, and Hauger is making his bid to win this event here. We see him kind of stretching on. It looks like Nick Hauger is now pulling away, doing a wonderful job towards the end. It will not be a BYU sweep. In fact, BYU, it looks to be they won't even win the individual title. It is going to be Hauger right here, sneaking through there in that final 1,000 meters, running a great job, and he will be crowned WCC champion. Oh, Nick Hauger putting it down on the BYU Cougars, doing a great job. What a phenomenal last stretch. Wow. Great job right there. We saw Connor McMillan finishing second. Rory Linkletter, surprisingly, back there. It looks to be in fourth. And there's Chris Ollie duking it out with a BYU athlete. And Ollie's going to finish just outside of the top 5. And we're trying to get a grab on who those BYU athletes are. So it's Connor Mance is in the mix. Connor McMillan also there. Rory Linkletter. There's James Mora coming through right here. But Nick Hauger doing a wonderful job, just absolutely throwing it down that last 1,000 meters. The final stretch right here as he went around that final lagoon to make his way in. what a wonderful job by him. It looks to be like Riley Austin finishing up right there, congratulating his teammate. That 841 steeplechase strength coming in very well. There's some more athletes, another Portland athlete coming through. Looks to be another BYU Cougars. They're sorting themselves out, grabbing some of those low sticks up front. The Portland Pilots, that very well could play out pretty significantly in the team competition. Now, there's not a lot of space in BYU. Whether they finish third or fourth in the individuals isn't going to make that big a difference. But boy, Nick Hauger getting that single stick is a really wonderful win for the Portland Pilots. It says Hauger, McMillan, Mance, Linkletter, and a surprise finishing in fourth, and then Braden McClellan from BYU in fifth spot. But I gotta be honest with you. I'm a little shocked. Linkletter didn't have the final swagger that he normally does here. So I don't know if it's a heavy training week for him or just he got kind of got his doors blown off. But one way or the other, Nick Hauger, class of the field, and huge props to him.
Yeah, Hauger really had the leg kick, and we saw it in the final 1,000 meters. He really put it into overdrive at that point.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, we were talking about that sight line around that final stretch of the course where it really wound its way around the lake for the final time, and it looks like unofficially BYU seems to have edged out Portland, and Gonzaga, using that pack running, may have come in third. We're going to look and see whether or not that holds up on the official results. But oh man, what a great run by Nick Hauger. I'm thoroughly impressed. He is a phenomenal athlete, but to lay it down on BYU against the seniors on their home course at altitude, this right here, that's a performance of the day in my opinion.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights that took place during the race. As you see athletes finishing it out, and this is how they started about 25 minutes ago. And BYU and Portland setting a fast pace early. We had that crowd of about 30 up front for a while, Josh.
Yeah, a few folks up there at the front. It started fast, but it closed down pretty quick. So the big pack, and you see Mora and Hauger and a bunch of the BYU guys up there. And then it started to string out. You see the pack of 4 at this point in the race until it was down to just 3, and then Hauger honestly, just rocked that last 1,000, and so big props to him. And like I said, it's no small feat taking down some phenomenal BYU athletes who were out there at pre-nationals tangling with the best in the country. This is a huge testament to how good the WCC is in terms of cross country. These are two of the best teams overall in the country. And I think that they're getting better going into regionals, and they're going to be great at the national meet. So again, there you see the athletes out there unofficially as well.
Yeah, and you look at this national meet. Do either of these teams have a strong chance to get back on the podium as they did last year?
Oh yeah, I'd be shocked if they didn't. To be honest with you, I mean these are two of the best teams in the country. These are you don't want to say blue chip, because I know that they look at it as like we are definitely like a hard-working team, but they're as good as they get. And I think that the Portland with Hauger's finish here today, if he can replicate that at nationals, adding another 2 kilometers, he looked strong. He looked great, and it looked easy for him, to be honest. I think that's a strong indication. Once you throw in a couple of other athletes that they had sit on the sidelines going into regionals and going into the national meet, Portland's going to be awful tough. Northern Arizona, to their credit, is a very, very good team, and I think it's going to take a huge effort for either BYU or for Portland to overcome them. But boy, I got to say that they are as good as it gets in cross country this year.
And when you look at the total WCC picture, I mean, people know the conference for women's volleyball, men's basketball, women's soccer are probably the 3 best in terms of ball sports. But in terms of all sports, this one might be the best. You could make that argument.
I think it's getting even a bit better. Unofficially, the scores that I have are BYU at 21, and it looks like Portland might be at 52. And I think that when you look at those scores, on when you look at the scores on paper, what you're really looking for is how do these individuals perform against each other.
And take a look at our individual results. You see Nick Hauger out at the top, and let's head down to the finish line where Sammy O'Brien is standing by with our champion.
Yeah, thanks guys. Down here with Nick Hauger. Nick, it seems like you could run another race. You just finished that one. How are you feeling right now?
I feel good, for sure. A lot of training has gone into this. This hasn't been necessarily a target, but it's been a focus as like a stepping stone on, just kind of assessing where we're at. My last race 4 weeks ago at Wisconsin, and, watching pre-nats and watching BYU race, they race gutsy. And so I wanted to get up there, race with them, and, kind of push the envelope and see what would happen. It was really just open-ended, see what we can do today.
Of course, it doesn't seem like it affected you, but the altitude, how did you use that to your advantage?
I think it was a mentality, really, going into this. You can let that sort of thing get in your head, and really we aren't that high up, and it was a matter of hydration, some mentality that it's just another race, and adding that extra variable would only get to you if you let it. And so today we are just aiming to not put it in our mindset. So.
And of course, you guys neck and neck with BYU all year, this being their home course. When it came to the end, BYU was leading for most of this race. What pulled you to take the lead?
Just the competition of it. This was an amazing venue, and there's just a huge crowd, and you really let that excite you. And this is my 4th time. This is the last time at WCCs for me, so it was really like, let's just enjoy this moment and let the energy pump me up. And the BYU energy is always huge, and so I'm really thankful for that.
And every time you've been here, a BYU individual has won. Now it's your turn for the first time. How does that feel?
It feels great. Yeah, it's been. I have a lot of guys in the past that really gave me inspiration. Scott Fauble in the past has gone for it a couple times, and so kind of towards the end of that, when I was, trying to push it, I was like, can we be like Scott Fauble today, and can we execute it? And so that was really fun. I knew my guys were battling it out somewhere around me, and that really gives me motivation. It's like run for them and run for Portland, and that's really got me through. So.
Well, congrats, Nick, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Back to you guys.
Great job by Sammy down at the finish line. When we come back, we'll tell you who's standing at the top of the mountain when it comes to the team champion. Will it be BYU? Will it be Portland? We'll firm that up when we return on the W.TV. And you're looking live at the Wasatch Mountains high above Provo, Utah. And we're going to talk to the coach of the team that's standing atop the mountain. Let's head down as we take a look at the championship results. BYU, Portland, Gonzaga, San Francisco, and Santa Clara round out today's top 5. Sammy O'Brien is with Cougar head coach Ed Eyestone.
Thanks, guys. Ed, first off, congrats on the win. This one being the 4th straight WCC title for the Cougars. What's special about this team?
Well, it's a good group of guys who've just worked together, sacrificed a lot, worked really hard over the summertime, and have some big, bodacious goals as they go into the season. And this was one of them, certainly, to win the conference meet, especially when you're hosting it here on this beautiful course at home. Love the fact that we had some great competition out there. Certainly Portland is ranked number 3 in the country, and they brought their top guy here today, and he showed what they're capable of doing. But I think my guys ran the kind of race that they wanted to do, kind of a chill and kill, and I was impressed by the way that they were able to kind of ratchet the pace up every 2K. So a good test of fitness for us today, and from here we go on to the regionals and nationals.
How much do you think that home field advantage, the fans, the altitude, everything that goes in with that helped out today?
Oh, that's always helpful. There's no doubt, and I'm sure we only get to come up to altitude about every 9 or 10 years, so we want to take advantage of that. But I think I think ultimately the fitness carries the day. We saw with the Portland runner who ended up winning today. He's not an altitude trained guy, but obviously was the fittest guy today. So I think fitness, as long as you run a controlled race, don't go out too crazy early on at altitude. It's still going to break down kind of according to what you would think. But we like the fact that we got a lot of fans out here, a lot of family. That's the main thing. They got opportunities to see the guys and the women run at home.
And with the West Coast Conference Championships, you guys being 2, Portland at 3, Gonzaga coming up there towards the end of the top 25, what emphasis do you put on your program for this event?
Well, obviously this is there are 2 main meets we want to do well at. One is the conference championship and the other is the national championship. And so the guys know we're in championship portion of the season right now, and so we do workouts accordingly. We didn't really back down a lot this week as we've done maybe in past ones because we knew we maybe had a bit of an advantage with the altitude. But we still, got some really good work in, and I think this was a nice test of fitness for us, and we'll build on this, hopefully take some confidence out of this, and do some little tweaks going into the first round of the NCAAs, which is a regional meet, and then the national championships on November 17th.
Great, congrats, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to you guys.
Yep.
All right, great working with you this afternoon, Sammy. And Josh, your final thoughts on the men's race?
Look, I got to say, Nick Auger ran phenomenally well. And it was a small sliver, little taste of what BYU and Portland have to offer on the men's side. And, of course, on the women's side of the event as well, we saw BYU women doing exactly what they should do at this race and carry the championship, along with Erica Brooke-Jarvis with an impressive win of her own.
Yeah, we saw a lot here on a championship Saturday. And, Josh, any surprises in the men's race?
I think the big surprise for me is probably deeper in the team results. We knew that Gonzaga had a shot to be in the top 3. Their pack spread, it was pretty tight, so they got it done. I think it's a very, very good thing for the Zags. And then, of course, in 5th, Santa Clara stepping up in 5th, I think was a very, very nice thing to see for the depth of WCC.
There you see the championship awards that will be presented in a short time here in Provo, Utah. Well, from my partners, Sammy O'Brien and Josh Muxon, that'll do it for today's live coverage from Provo, Utah. We hope you've enjoyed today's presentation of the 2018 West Coast Conference Cross Country Championships. Even though we're finishing up, so you can stick to the W.TV this weekend for live coverage of many key WCC and women's volleyball matchups all weekend long. Live coverage of the WCC 2018 Cross Country Championships has been an exclusive presentation of the West Coast Conference. You can watch it again on the W.TV. You can always follow the WC on WCCSports.com or follow us on WCC Sports on Twitter.